Hi, good morning. This is Adam Verdin, and we're back with our series Homegrown, where we visit local businesses and organizations that make our county special. Today, we're here with Sean with Southpaw Signs right here in the heart of Oceano. And Sean and his company have done many of the iconic signs that we see in our county, but also up and down the state as well. And we're going to start with asking Sean a few questions. Sean, how did you pick Oceano to set up your shop?
So we had our shop for years in San Luis Obispo, and we bought a home in '08 in Grover Beach and started looking for a building that would be large enough for us down here in South County. Took several years for us, and we were on Pike Lane for a few years before we moved into this building. And so we're grateful to be here, close to home, close to the beach, and in a small community.
Yeah. And how many years have you been at this location?
We've been in this building for 7 years.
For 7 years. And is it true that you did the Madonna Inn sign?
We did not. So for the last several years, we have serviced the neon on the
Okay.
Madonna Inn sign. Everybody's worked on the Madonna Inn sign. Everybody. And so the last several years, we've been servicing the neon. And then we did a repaint a few years ago.
Okay.
So gallons and gallons and gallons of pink.
Right.
And then we go out every couple of years and freshen up the pink.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. So then let me ask you, when you do a sign, or you have to engage with the different cities and the county to get permits for those signs,
Yes.
right? With respect to the county, what's that process like?
So the county has been a difficult one. You can't, a sign permit is a really small project. And most of the time, if you're a business, from the time that you open up, you start your lease on a building, and then you move in, may only be a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, but it could take 6 months and thousands of dollars to get a permit in the county. It has always been a little bit disproportionate. Santa Barbara County is a rough one, but San Luis is. It also takes a while. The process is, just paperwork and waiting. When we can do things over the counter, it's a lot easier.
Right. How about within San Luis County? Are there cities that are like, oh, I have a sign happening in such a city? That's going to be a pretty streamlined process.
So for the cities,
Yeah.
San Luis has always been the model, and people are usually surprised to hear this. But San Luis has, on purpose, set up their permit process to be an over-the-counter transaction. So if you read their rules, which are fair, and you apply for a sign permit in San Luis following the rules, it should happen over the counter, which is unbelievable in this day and age in California. Most of the other towns have a process where you have to submit, you have to wait, you have to go before a committee, and you just are squandering time and money that could be done a little smarter.
Right.
Yeah, like the San Luis model is a good one, and a lot of people are surprised to hear that.
I'm surprised to hear that.
Yes. Yeah. No, the county. The county follows the other one. The county, and it also seems that there's not a public meeting, where you go. It's just decisions are happening on their time, behind closed doors. And I think that one of the things we have too is there's very little regulation out in the county, because a lot of that work, like if you have a winery and you go out there and you go through the permit process, it can take a ton of time, a ton of money for how small the project is. But then you could just look around and see that 9 out of 10 people haven't followed the rules or pulled a permit, which is evident by what they have for signage. But there doesn't seem to be any repercussion for that. And so you get into that thing of like, should I, shouldn't I? But the process, once again, could be streamlined.
Right.
It could be, we could intentionally make these things faster and easier.
So if you were to compare the city of San Luis and the county of San Luis, right? You say, okay, I submit, from the time you submit a design to, say, the city of San Luis versus the county, What does that look like in terms of timing and cost if you were to compare the two? If there's a way of comparing apples to apples, same
Yes.
sign, right?
So I would say that if we had a similar sign that fit normal criteria,
Yeah,
is that if we go to San Luis, we should be able to pull that permit over the counter when we walk in. And I haven't been doing the permit process here in the shop, but I'm going to just say that permit might cost $700 over the counter if you follow the rules. What it seems to be like in the county is that you might turn it in, you might wait a week, you might wait 3 weeks, you might email them, did you get it? Is it in the queue? And then they might come back and ask for some sort of a revision, these types of things that they're just absorbing time that could have happened at intake. And it might cost a couple $1,000s by comparison. And so most of the time, the way I feel about it is the fee's just a fee. That's a fee of doing business. If it's high, it's unfortunate, but the time is what kills me. I tell San Luis all the time, raise your fees. Just let me do it at the counter.
right.
So anyway, yeah, and that goes back to the idea to remember is that to put a sign in the ground, 90% of them, is an unbelievably small process and project. It doesn't need weeks of review or complicated analysis most of the time.
Got it. So then, if you were to, if so, so your take would be is that if you were to fix that process in the county, it would be an expedited timeline with rules that you understand from the upfront.
Correct. And I think the way to do it is that what the city has done is they have put together like 90% of a sign permit
Yeah.
that people are going to ask for fits in a very small set of criteria. And so if the permit process was called out with those parameters so that when they go in, the person at the counter can just check the boxes that it fits those parameters and let it go. And if it's unusual, let it go to a longer process. That type of a model works good. When we just submit at the counter anonymously and then someone later at a later date looks it over, then we've had scenarios where we've submitted, and this isn't necessarily to the county, but examples of this because it's everywhere, is that we've submitted a set of plans and then waited for weeks to get a response. And then when we get the first response, the response is, you didn't tell us the height of the sign in the drawing. So we waited 3 weeks for something that it was a 2-second response. But they make us turn them in on scale drawings. They could have figured that out, but we didn't type it out for them. And so then we send it right away, and then we go into the 3-week wait period again. And so these are the maddening type of things of the process. And so to answer your question, if we were able to, this is 90% of the criteria we're going to see for the county employee at the desk so that they know what they can say yes to. And then encourage people to enforce that, do it over the counter, you could shorten this process a bunch.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to understand that when you say something is taking 3 weeks on top of 3 weeks, and rather than a $700 fee, it's a couple $1,000 plus your time in addressing that, all that is cost that you actually don't incur. It's passed to the customer.
Correct.
Right? And which is a business owner trying to let people know that they exist with their signage.
Yep. And so we have, over the last 10 years, as it's gotten harder and harder to pull permits, and the criteria, the electrical standards, all these things, is that we'll see this thing where, if it takes a few months, if we have to bill to handle the steps through the process, and then if you have a couple $1,000s in permit fees on the end of that, you could be $3,000 into a permit for a business that wasn't even buying a $3,000 sign, to start with,
Right.
And so that it does seem a little bit disproportionate. It seems like out of all of the regulations out there, nothing affects the area like a sign. It's one of the most face forward things that change the way a town, an area feels. But it's a small project that could be streamlined a little bit. And what we've seen, if we were to use some examples also on regulation, is Santa Barbara, as an example.
Santa Barbara City or
Santa
county?
Barbara City.
Yeah.
Their downtown area has the hardest process of regulation to make sure to get through for a sign. Takes the most time, takes the most money, and the most frustration. And they do that because they're trying to preserve quality signage in their downtown core. But if you walk down State Street, San Luis has nicer signs, and they give their permits out over the counter. And
Right.
so we have exact things to compare to that we can all see.
Right.
That makes the conversation simple.
Do you think in the last 3 or 4 years, in that period of time, do you think the permitting process has become more difficult?
It's become more difficult for two reasons. It's become more difficult because regulation keeps getting added on. Well, someone made a sign we didn't like, so then we wrote a rule against red plastic. Someone made a sign out of yellow plastic, so we wrote a rule about yellow plastic. And then it's like, well, someone made a sign out of pink plastic. Well, now we just are afraid of plastic. Let's make sure that we have a committee meeting to choose the plastic color. And so we have this regulation that is part of it. There's also part of the pre-planning now where, like, if you open a multi-tenant center, you're required ahead of time to make a sign program, even though you don't have your tenants or necessarily the size of the units figured out. And so while the idea is to ensure that that we come up with good signs when the tenants come, what we end up having is we end up just defaulting down to a very rectangular, nondescript sign package that just gets signed off because it checked the 100 boxes we had to check, instead of promoting from the earlier in the plans some sort of diversity in the signage, which makes it more interesting. And it's ironic that every sign program in California, San Luis included, starts out with the header paragraph. This sign program is set up to ensure a lively, upbeat, diverse signage for the character of the center. And then 5 years you look down and they've just approved 14-inch letters and a 14-inch line.
Yeah.
It happens every time,
Sean, how many people work here?
There is 7 of us here.
There's 7 of you here. Let me ask you, how do you feel the county, do you feel the county can do a better job in addressing the issue of affordable housing and affordability in general? A lot of the businesses I talk to, they talk about, just the cost of living for their staff in our county. Is that something you've experienced?
So it is tough here. Like every time we go to hire, and we look at what we consider a wage for someone that does what we do, and then I remember how much our mortgage payment is, or rentals.
Yeah.
Like I feel grateful I have a mortgage payment with a low rate. And I look at rentals, and also because my kids are, they're in their 30s now, but they're that where you look at what a rental is, and I'm doing the math between what we think is good pay and what it costs to get a place to live here, and it seems like a problem. And I don't understand how it happens, but I do see it as a problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what the city can do about it, or the county can do about it. It seems to me like, if, from what I can tell from funded low-income housing, and I'll say this out loud to be corrected, but it seems to me that if I see something, like when we worked on the Weinman project, we did the sign on the corner, we had to go in the building to go up and crawl out a window on the 3rd story to measure the sign location. And it seems like I remember seeing the posted low-income rental prices, and they were higher than the market, than if you just went on Craigslist, or the New Times, whatever it was back then. And so it seems to me like we keep saying that there's low income, but it's only low income if it's subsidized by taxes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem like a solution.
So let me ask you. So I mean, we just spent quite a bit of time talking about what the process is like.
Yeah.
Just getting a sign,
Yeah.
right? So my understanding is, when talking to different people, is that there's the frustrations that you have getting a sign.
Mhm.
People also have just getting a building permit,
Absolutely.
right?
On a much larger scale.
And to the extent that the county can, if they can make that process more affordable,
Yeah.
whether even if the fees are constant, if they can reduce that timeline, because at the end of the day, time is money,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
That could be possibly an approach, or one prescription to help fix something like that.
100%
Yeah.
is because the way it feels now is when we go in to pull a sign permit, and this is just a sign permit, and and they make it hard, and we're good at our job. Like we are good at this. We don't need to be corrected by someone
Right.
who doesn't do our job.
Yeah.
But when they're like, well, you have to call out a measurement for this. Well, it's a scale drawing. You're wasting time, irrelevant time. Like there's never been a better example of red tape bureaucracy than something like that. And then it's like, well, you have to allow for, just these irrelevant things.
Right.
That the building permit seems to be the same thing. If someone owns their property and they have space on their property and they want to, put an ADU in it,
Yeah.
like people have opinions on them, but it generates housing if
Yeah.
people want it. It opens the door. And if we look at something like what the city of Grover's done, and I don't know what it's like anywhere else, it's just my neighborhood, is they just said, look, here's 4 options. If this is the option you choose, there's a permit fee cost, and it's done. Go to work, and it's like that. It goes back to the same thing about signage. It's like everyone's going to order the same type of sign, plus or minus. Just a plan for that, and make sure that. But it's the time, make sure the time happens.
Right.
Time and fees.
Right.
And
so it should be what I'm also hearing from you is, if the city of San Luis Obispo can make this be an over the counter type thing
for most of
for
them,
for
yes.
most of them,
Yes.
why can't the county do that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why can't they? Could just. Okay, so there's 2 things in the county that are different, but you're absolutely right. Is they could just take the text right out of San Luis and put it in their thing and do it at the counter. They wouldn't even have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a consultant to write that sign program like
Yeah.
San Luis did, the city. And then they could. The only thing that would help the county is that because they deal out of town into the farmland where we have so many wineries out here. Wineries are what drive the county sign code for the most part. But we all know all the wineries want the same type of sign. There's an average size, there's an average height, there's an average location that you could just say, if this is your parameters,
Right.
do it at the counter, and that's okay. And so anyway, it seems like they could do it.
Yeah.
And when San Luis set theirs up, they did the city. They set up a thing where, they hired a consultant, came out of the Bay Area, came down. They interviewed people in the trades. I got interviewed for that and talked about what we think would be easy. But they also I think they had roundtables. It's like, what can we do? It's an easy process. And we've also offered, for the past 20 years, we've offered to make the sample board for the city, so
for the county?
For the city.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Like even though San Luis has a great thing, I've always felt like it would be helpful if they had a board. So if someone comes in with a drawing and says, why won't you approve this? Because it doesn't quite meet the standards, they could just point to, you can use that design, it just needs to be this type of sign. Like there's little visual aids that would make it easier too.
Yeah.
But the text is there. San Luis City.
It's a text,
Yeah.
right? Perfect. Well, Sean, thank you very much for your time and your tour this morning of your shop.
Yeah.
Appreciate all the good work you do,
Thank you.
and thank you for taking the time to do this.
You bet. Thanks.
Right.